9 experienced mountaineers walked into the Ural wilderness in winter. Only their tent remained. In January of 1959, a group of 10 university students from Sverdlovsk set out on what they believed would be a routine ski expedition through the northern Ural Mountains. They were young, trained, and confident in their abilities. Igor Dyatlov, their leader, was 23 years old and carried with him a detailed plan and a small diary where he would record the journey's progress. None of them knew that within weeks, their names would become synonymous with one of history's most haunting unsolved mysteries. The expedition was meant to last about 2 weeks, and the team had split into 2 groups. 9 would press forward into the high passes, while 1 member would turn back early due to injury. As they moved deeper into the snow-covered wilderness, the landscape around them grew increasingly remote and silent. The wind moved through the mountain passes with a sound like whispered warnings, though of course, no one was listening for such things. January 31st came and went. The weather had turned sharply colder, and the team decided to make camp on the slopes of a mountain they called Kalet Siak, which in the local Mansi language meant Dead Mountain. The name would later seem impossible to ignore, though at the time it was simply a geographical marker on their carefully drawn route. They pitched their tent that evening, and Igor made his final diary entry. Everything, by all accounts, appeared normal. What happened next remains unknown to this day. What we do know is this. Sometime in the night between February 1st and 2nd, something compelled the 9 young people inside that tent to cut their way out through the fabric and flee into the darkness. They didn't take their shoes. They didn't take their heavy coats. They simply ran. The search party that eventually arrived at the camp found it in a state that seemed to defy explanation. The tent was still standing, but it had been cut open from the inside. Food supplies were left untouched. The sleeping bags remained rolled out. The stove was cold. It was as though they had abandoned everything in a moment of pure panic, but no one could find any evidence of what might have triggered such terror. The searchers didn't yet understand the full scale of what had transpired. They were still operating in the fog of incomplete knowledge, searching for survivors who were already beyond help. 2 weeks would pass before the bodies began to be found, scattered across the frozen landscape in configurations that seemed to invite more questions than answers. February 26th brought the discovery of the first 5 bodies, arranged in a line as they stretched toward the forest below the camp. They were hypothermic, yes, but their clothing was in disarray. One of them was found without shoes. Another had severe burns on his body. They had been searching for shelter, searching for fire, searching for warmth in a place where none could be found. It took another 2 months before the remaining 4 bodies surfaced from beneath the snow and ice. These discoveries were far more disturbing. One body bore evidence of internal injuries with no external wounds. Another was missing a tongue. A third had severe burns. The official investigation would later conclude it was all accidental, all explainable through hypothermia and panic, but the physical evidence seemed to whisper something darker. Theories have multiplied over the decades like snow accumulating on a winter night. Some have suggested an avalanche, though no evidence of one was ever found at the site. Others point to military experiments or secret weapons testing, ideas that rest more on Cold War anxiety than on physical facts. Still others whisper about the indigenous Mansi people, about territorial warnings, about a place where outsiders were not meant to venture. The most unsettling part of this story is not what was found, but what remains unanswered. The expedition members left behind no messages, no final warnings, no explanation carved into the tent fabric or written in the snow. They simply fled into the darkness, and whatever drove them to that decision died with them on that frozen mountain. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of those rare moments in modern history where the official explanation and the physical evidence seem to exist in different dimensions. We have the facts, but not the meaning. We have the bodies, but not the answer. And perhaps that's what makes it so compelling to those who sit with it in the quiet hours before sleep. The knowledge that some mysteries are meant to remain mysteries. If you find yourself drawn to these untold stories, to the quiet contemplation of history's strangest moments, subscribe so you can return to these mysteries whenever you need to settle your mind into that space between waking and sleep, where the strange becomes strangely comforting. Subscribe so you don't miss the next unsolved mystery waiting for you before bed.